Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Dylan Johnson from Soccer Mag, and welcome back to another episode of Mixing with the DJs. I'm joined once again by my fellow DJ Dylan Jack, and today we'll be doing a preview for Gameweek 7 of the Premier League. And just a disclaimer, this week doesn't look that interesting compared to previous weeks. Mostly the bigger sides playing lower to mid-table teams with 2 or 3 exciting games in there. So it's going to be an interesting one this weekend. Who drops points? Who takes advantage of who they're playing. First up, we have Crystal Palace versus Liverpool. And personally, I think slightly hesitant going into this game because Palace...
Interesting.
Yeah, Palace haven't had a great start, but I think this is the kind of game that Liverpool have struggled with.
Yeah.
Even in Jurgen Klopp in his prime, going away to a team that isn't doing well. And they always seem to bounce back against us. And even though Palace haven't started the season well, I think that Liverpool... I'm confident that they'll get a result, but watching how they played against Wolves, they can't be as sloppy. I think 2 weeks in a row, the Premier League's ruthless. Crystal Palace will eventually play well, and I could see it being this weekend. I think that I trust the team, and they haven't really given me a reason besides Nottingham Forest to really doubt them. But I think against Wolves, there was a lot of passages where it was so sloppy. I think the goal was just, you can't do that against Palace. I think Wolves almost took advantage of it. We got won by a penalty, which is not very convincing at all. I'm going to go 2-1 Liverpool because I think Liverpool are stronger. They seem to be doing well. And I don't see them replicating the same performance 2 weeks in a row negatively.
No.
I think Arne Slot is very meticulous with the way he prepares. And I think he comes across as ruthless. So he'll identify the problems that were against Wolves, which is probably, on the ball, a bit too careless, putting Liverpool putting themselves under pressure. So, and I think in front of goal as well, not being clinical enough. So I'm going to go 2-1 Liverpool this week. I know I said the same thing last week, but I think that this could be a potential speed bump. I'm hoping not, but
I don't see anything else than a Liverpool win in this game. Crystal Palace have been abysmal. I don't think they have, even though they have players that potentially have I just don't think they have the finishing. I don't think they have the goals in them to cause Liverpool problems. They'll carve out 1 or 2 opportunities on the break. Guys like Eze will try and press Liverpool centre-backs. We know that Liverpool like to hold possession and with their defence and progress the ball through defence, guys like Van Dijk. But I don't see Liverpool conceding more than 1 goal simply because Crystal Palace just don't score more than generally score 1 goal a game, and that's pretty much it. So, I think 2-1 or even I think a 3-1 is being fair too. I think that's what it's going to be. I think Liverpool, they won't, as you say, they won't let themselves be sloppy for too many games in a row. So, I think Liverpool 3-1.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're more confident than me. Next up, Arsenal versus Southampton, and I think pretty much echoes what we said last week, even though Leicester made it a bit more interesting. You know who you are that called us out, but I'm glad you didn't wait until the final whistle. But once again, I think, Arsenal, their game against PSG, they completely dominated PSG. So for them at home to then go and fumble against Southampton, I just don't think that's a possibility. No. Even though it is the Premier League, I think Southampton have been genuinely terrible. Worse than Leicester. Yeah. So another one, I'm going to back a 3-0 Arsenal. I just don't think... I think Arsenal are purring. Yes. And there hasn't really been any indication other than... I think also against Leicester, the 2 goals they conceded were completely against the flow of the game. Yes. I think Leicester were lucky to be 2-2. It could have been 5-2, 6-2, 7-2. I mean, 4-0, 3-0 looked like it was probably the more fair result. So I'm going for another 3-0. I'm backing the Gunners.
Yeah, I think you're on the money there. I think, Southampton, they've only scored 3 goals in the beginning of this campaign.
I don't think they've kept a clean sheet.
And they haven't kept a clean sheet either. So, they don't have much threat up front. They're probably going to sit back and just try and defend and see out a draw as far as they can. Won't have much luck. It hasn't worked for anyone. Arsenal have too much firepower. If they get a corner, they can score through a corner. So, and Southampton also have their set-piece trouble. So, I think, a 3-0 Arsenal at least.
Okay. Brentford, Wolves, I don't think there's much to say about this. I think from the neutral perspective, could be exciting. Both teams need points. but I see it being a 1-1. You know, I think
Yes.
Wolves need the points more than Brentford maybe need. Actually, no, I think they both need the points equally.
Yeah, they do.
We mentioned in the last episode, Brentford, the kings of the first minute, but then the next 89, they really struggle.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go for a 1-1, maybe a 2-2.
Yes.
But I don't really think there's much of a difference between the two sides.
No, there's not much. I think Brentford are maybe a little bit better coached, a little bit better set up, but yeah, in terms of player quality, there's probably not much of a difference. I think maybe Brentford can edge this 2-1. That's what I would go for, yeah.
Leicester versus Bournemouth, another titanic clash. I think Bournemouth on paper are the better team.
Yeah, much the better.
And Leicester, again, like we mentioned against Arsenal, the scoreline actually flatters them a lot more than their actual performance. I think I'm going to give Bournemouth a 1-0 away win.
Yeah.
Don't really think Leicester have much in the tank.
Hey, maybe Leicester can snatch a goal there to just grasp a sort of a 1-1 draw there. But don't see... that's probably the most they're getting out of this game is a late draw. I think Bournemouth favourites 2-1. I would go for that. Yeah.
Man City, Fulham. I think I think Man City will probably win this game, but there are question marks now after their performance against Newcastle that they are vulnerable. I think the Rodri conversation hasn't spoken about a lot, but it is true. And Fulham are the kind of team they quietly going along by their business. I think we mentioned in the last episode that they're going under the radar, but they are building a very interesting attacking team, and they can score goals, and they've kind of caused problems to everyone they've played against. They beat Newcastle, was a 3-1.
Yes.
So this could be another potential slip up for City. I don't think they will, just because I think that they're at home, and again, Man City don't drop points very often consecutively.
No.
I think the last time they did was without Rodri, which is, but I'm going to go for maybe a 3-1 City.
Yeah.
I think these are the kind of games where Haaland just absolutely annihilates.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think it just depends on what Fulham's approach is. If they're just going to sit back and defend and that might be their goal, is sit back, defend, let City have all of the ball and wait for a mistake. But, City don't really make many mistakes, even without Rodri in that midfield. I think City probably take this 2-0. Fulham have a bit of a threat up front. They might force a goal, a mistake and a goal, but there won't be many from City. So, I'm going to go with a 2-0 to City. Cool.
West Ham, Ipswich. I'm going for Ipswich's 5th draw in a row. I think even though West Ham are at home, they haven't been stronger than Ipswich this season, I don't think. And I think Ipswich are really showing great character in their performances. I mean, that last draw against Villa was huge. We kind of wrote them off. I think they're an interesting side this season. They are definitely a step above the other promoted teams. I don't think they'll maybe get a lot more points than them, but it's their nature of the performances are so much better, a lot more resilient. I think we're seeing with Southampton and Leicester, they're getting blown away. But other than Man City, which is kind of expected, they haven't really been annihilated. No. So I think I'm going to go for a 1-1.
Yeah.
1-1.
Yeah. I'm going to go... I'll also go with the 1-1. I think that's fair. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everton, Newcastle. I think Everton's peak has already dropped. I don't see them beating Newcastle.
No.
I think they got a massive win last week, but unfortunately, I don't think the squad's good enough to sustain it, especially against a team like Newcastle who look to be doing very well.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for a 2-0 Newcastle. I think it's going to be as simple as that.
Yeah. Newcastle need the win because they don't want to start getting cut adrift from the top 6 or top 4. That's what they'll be targeting, so they'll be desperate for the win. Everton have a bit of a goal in there, but their defense isn't good enough to hold that Newcastle attack. So I think especially if Isak is fit again, then he comes back in, and Newcastle
Gordon against his old club,
he's going to be very fired up. So I'm going to go with a 3-1 to Newcastle.
Okay. The big one, Aston Villa versus Manchester United. Take us away.
Erik ten Hag's last game in charge, perhaps. No, we don't know. I mean, it's tough times for United fans. Obviously, looking back at that game again, it was just I think that was just a tough loss. Coming off a 3-0 home loss, back-to-back 3-0 home losses, and now away to Villa, where it's a very, very difficult, especially if you're a team that's not informed, to go there. I mean, these are two teams that have kind of, well, United especially more so than Villa, but two teams that have kind of had roller coaster performances in games and roller coaster form in the season. Villa have relied a lot on sort of late shows and late goals to dig themselves out of holes. Sometimes they tend to sort of go a goal down in the first half and then come back really strongly in the second. But I think they're just, Villa are a much more settled side going into this. I mean, United, there's so much noise around Ten Hag's future, and the performances just haven't been good enough. I mean, maybe playing away from home where United could potentially get away with sitting back, being a bit more defensive, and then hitting a team on the counter instead of being the team that is trying to get on the front foot, hold possession very high up the field. That could probably suit United. You never know. But I think this probably has all the makings of a sort of a 2-2 draw, I think, because both teams have their flaws, and both teams have a couple of goals in them, although I think United have struggled with their finishing. But if a guy like Rashford or someone like Garnacho is on form and finds their form in a game, then they can knock in. United could knock in a couple of goals. So I think a 2-2 draw is probably fair here. It's two teams with their own weaknesses. So yeah, that's what I would go for.
Do you think a draw's enough for Ten Hag to stay?
I really don't know. It's, we don't know what's happening with Ineos and whether they are seriously considering Ten Hag's future. If there's a draw against Porto and there's a draw or a loss against Porto, it really does depend on the performance. That's the thing. The result doesn't really matter as much as the performance, and giving United fans sort of signs that yes, Ten Hag can turn it around, because that's been the whole problem this whole season, is that the performances have been very, very wonky. They've gone from being sort of good against very unstable sides like Crystal Palace, weak teams, but against teams like Liverpool and Tottenham playing at home, where you expected to go onto the front foot, be the team that dominates possession, really impose yourself on the opposition, the performances haven't been good. So there need to be those signs that United can actually put themselves on the front foot. If they're just sort of edging games, maybe that takes and they sort of sneak a couple of wins, maybe that takes the pressure off a little bit, but that's not really signs of a long-term improvement. It's not sustainable. There's no signs of long-term improvement there. So I think that's what United fans want to see. They want to see a big improvement in the performances. I don't think we get that. I think we get United trying to sneak a couple of goals on the counter-attack, really battle to a hard-fought win, but I think it's going to be a 2-2 draw. I don't know whether that's enough. I don't know. But it's really in the performances. That's what it's going to be in to save Ten Hag's job.
And another thing I wanted to ask is, what do you think of Benny McCarthy's comments on United, his time there, and chatting about Ten Hag?
Yeah, I think it's fair.
And the players like Bruno and Delo and all those kind of things. What are your thoughts on those comments?
Yeah, I think, I read the one where he sort of said Ten Hag's a great tactician, which I think he is a good tactician. He doesn't win the number of trophies and do well in cup runs if he's just a poor tactician. I think he has his tactical pluses. But I think it appears that, looking from the outside, it looks that Ten Hag isn't the best player manager. He's not a very personable guy. That's why he brought on someone like a Steve McLaren, who's maybe not the best tactician, but is really, really good in terms of his player management. Because Steve McLaren can be that arm around the shoulder. He can be that guy that players could go to when they have an issue and they say, listen, because Ten Hag sort of does feel a little bit colder in the way he manages his players. I think
even in his post-match press conferences, you can see he doesn't have that charismatic side that Jurgen Klopp or Pep Guardiola or even Arteta has, where you feel like the players are fighting for him no matter what, good or bad. It feels like at United, I don't know, it just doesn't have that warmth from the players and the manager being united.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what they tried with getting Ruud in. Ruud was sort of maybe brought in to be a bit of a tactician himself, help with the training sessions, but also be someone who, an ex-United player, someone who the players could immediately, attach to, because he did wonderful things when he was at United as a player. Guys that a guy who the players would respect, a guy who can be that sort of arm around the shoulder again. But yeah, it doesn't appear that Ten Hag's magnificent, and that's one of the things that made Sir Alex Ferguson one of the greatest managers of all time. It was not only was he very, very tactically flexible. I mean, you can't really sit here and say this was the Fergie way, because Ferguson didn't really have a style of play. He evolved he evolved his plans according to what the trends were in modern football at the time. But one of his great successes was that he was a very, very good, even though he had his fallings out with the likes of Roy Keane and David Beckham, he was a great player manager. He would know things about players. Players wouldn't, tell them about what their father or their mother did for a living or where they came from, but he would go up to the player and say, "Oh, how's your mother? How's your father, the teacher," or something like that, and how's the job teacher treating him, or something like that. He would go up to players and immediately sort of know things about them because he'd done his research. He was that kind of a warm character. So yeah, I think that's maybe the one area where if Ten Hag is really deficit, it is player management, and that's a fair comment from Benny.
And I think another interesting point with that is that looking at United's managers since Fergie, other than Ollie, who was, I would say he's probably been the best manager out of the managers that have been there, it's all been pretty cold personalities. If you think of Louis van Gaal, Jose Mourinho, now Erik Ten Hag. And I feel like a consistent trend throughout has always been some players work incredibly hard and others don't. And I think if you look at the other teams around United in that time, there's never been a question about how hard the players at Man City work or how hard the players at Liverpool or Arsenal work. And I think maybe that's an element that in modern football, obviously tactics is more important than ever. But without getting the players on your side or building those relationships with them, they're not going to want to work hard. And if it's the same players the whole time, I think that's probably been the biggest problem, is just getting the right players' attitudes. I think another comment he said was that if all players trained like Bruno and Diogo Dalot, then United would win way more games. But it's crazy to me that it's been 10 years and the same things are said the whole time. How are you not changing that? It makes no sense.
It is strange. I mean, and it's not the same players that under Ten Hag that were under Mourinho. It's a completely different squad. It is Ten Hag's squad, and yet sort of the same noises remain that the players might not be working as hard in training or not really working as hard during a game, and that's a fair point. Going from a Van Gaal to a Mourinho, who had his fallings out with Pogba and the rest of them, and very, very stern guy when he is managing. Away from the field, he seems like a great person, but when it comes to player management, he has his demands and he is very stern and strict. And then going to Ollie, who was completely different, who was much more of a lighter character, who could. I mean, I think that what gets downplayed with Ollie is that he could be very stern at times, but he did. But I mean,
it was from a place of more respect.
It was respect. It wasn't necessarily I'm Ole Gunnar Solskjaer like Jose Mourinho was like respect. So that is something that United perhaps have to look at in the next with whoever succeeds, because Ten Hag's going to leave at some stage. We don't know when, but with whoever succeeds, Erik Ten Hag, they do need to look at somebody who's maybe a little bit better at that player management side of things and how that sort of works.
Well, and you said 2-2. I'm going with I'm going to be bold and say 3-1 Villa.
I wouldn't be surprised at this stage. It could be 2-2 United. It could be 3-1 Villa. United could go and sneak a win.
United could pull one off. I just think Villa, I think what we mentioned with them being the roller coaster in games is very true. But I just think they're too organized for United. I think when United have come against organized teams, they haven't done well. It's the chaos in the games that they thrive upon. And I think Unai Emery's probably going to, really put in a huge preparation and performance this weekend. So that's why I think 3-1 Villa. Chelsea Forest, I think relatively straightforward. I think Chelsea are in great form now. They really are showing great signs of improvement. And I think the question marks over Inter Maresca are pretty I mean, it's early to say, but the progress we've seen, I don't think there's, this is the best Chelsea have been in a while. So I'm going to go for 2-0 Chelsea. I think Cole Palmer's obviously amazing. Nicholas Jackson's insane. I think they've got way more balance to their team now. Yeah. So, 2-0.
Yeah, 2-0 at least, Forest sort of struggling a little bit. I would say Chelsea are just absolutely flying. They've sort of found a starting lineup and a formation and a system that works for them. 2-0 at least to Chelsea.
And the final game of the weekend, Brighton-Tottenham.
Yeah.
I personally think this is probably the most difficult one to predict, because even though Brighton have kind of fallen off a bit results-wise, they're still a great team.
Yeah.
And Spurs on a high after beating United. But still, I think, and no disrespect to Man United, but that's not a good enough test. I think we've seen that United aren't good enough to really judge yourself, because Liverpool went and beat United and lost to Forest the next week.
Yeah.
Spurs could, I think, lose this game. I think Brighton are very good. I'm going to sit on the fence and say a 2-2 draw.
Yeah.
Because I think the way that Spurs play, Brighton will want to be extremely aggressive. But in that's also Brighton's biggest weakness this season, being too aggressive. Yes. So I'm going to go 2-2. I think there will be goals. I think it'll be a great game to watch.
Yeah, this will be a great game for the neutral, I think 2-2 or one of the two sides probably winning 3-2. It could even go down to that. So, there's going to be plenty of goals in this one. Lots of action. I think, 2-2 or 3-2. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Well, thanks for joining me, Dill. And thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, etc. Let us know if we're stupid. Let us know if we're wrong. And during the games, tell us how wrong we are with the scorelines. We do appreciate the feedback. Even if we are wrong, we don't mind it. Thanks for joining again, Dill.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.